𝗙𝗲𝗵𝗲𝗿𝘁 الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. I ask Allah Ta'ala to grant us all the sincere intention and the good comprehension. Allahumma ameen. So we've reached the point in our book, A Father's Heartfelt Counsel to His Son, which is the advice of Ibnul-Jawziyy to his son, where the author said, 𝗙𝗲𝗵𝗿𝘀𝗵𝗲𝗿𝘁. So if we go back a little, he said, وَأَنْعَمَ عَلَيَّ بِالْعِلْمِ, that Allah endowed upon him with knowledge. He said, وَعِرْفَانِ الصَّوَابِ, and recognition of what is correct. So the explanation is, recognizing what is correct is an immense blessing from Allah. For it is from Allah's guidance that a Muslim recognizes the truth and follows it. And we were just mentioning at the end of the last lesson how hatred, al-hiqd, blinds the hearts. And subhanallah, we mentioned how at times a person would not recognize the truth for what it is, or the correct situation for what it is, and he might take a side that is against the correct side. So without a doubt, recognizing the truth is an immense blessing from Allah Ta'ala, and is something that we should ask Allah for. A similar sentiment is expressed in the supplication of some of the righteous Muslims. Some of the righteous Muslims said, Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqa فنتبعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا فنجتنبه ولا تجعل ذلك متشابها علينا فنتبع الهوى. O Allah, show us the truth as truth and enable us to follow it, and show us falsehood as falsehood and enable us to avoid it, and do not make it ambiguous to us lest we follow our desires. Yani, if Allah Ta'ala willed that this matter would be ambiguous to us, then what are we going to do? We don't see the truth as truth. We don't see falsehood as falsehood in a particular matter. For example, what would the person do? They're most likely going to follow their desires. So whoever has been shown the correct way and has been shown the truth, then really let them thank Allah. Say Alhamdulillah and work on truly being grateful slaves by not using the endowments to sin. When you go and attend a religious lesson, thank Allah who facilitated that for you while others go to commit a sin. Subhanallah. Right now, some of the slaves of Allah, they went out to commit sins, to disobey Allah, and to engage in what is forbidden. Right now, there are slaves of Allah in different places all over the earth that are engaged in al-ma'asi, disobedience and sins. while we are gathered by the will of Allah the Exalted for this lesson. Alhamdulillah. You see, when you try to do the good, the shaitan doesn't leave you. And those who go out to commit a sin after a sin after a sin, the shaitan is not as persistent with them, because it is like a demolished house already. Yani, these people are like a demolished house already. And so the scholars even said, would a thief, would a robber seek out a demolished house? They said no. What house does he seek out? He seeks out the full intact house, right? So if you try to attend the lesson, the devil will try and deter you. He will try to distract your heart. He will try to make you fall into a sin and make you fall into negligence. In any way, he'll come at you with something that he knows is a point of weakness for you. Because what does our qareen do? They watch us, and they watch what affects you. They don't know what's in our hearts, right? But they watch us, and they watch our facial expressions, and they watch our sayings and doings, and they watch and pay close attention to those things that affect us and that push us to a weak point. And they'll use those things against you in times where they want you to fall into a sin, or they want to distract you or make you fall into some negligence. So the shaitan, he doesn't leave a person when he sees him trying to obey Allah. If he sees you trying to obey Allah, he will come at you in ways by which he thinks he can make you fall into a sin. Because that's his goal. The goal of the shaitan is to make you and I disobedient. If he can, he will try to make the Muslim fall into kufr. That's his ultimate goal. That you would disbelieve in Allah. That you would fall into at least any type of kufr. So that he can get you out of the religion, and he hopes that you would die upon that so that you can be with him in hellfire. This is the goal of the devil, is to take as many people everlastingly with him to hellfire. Now, if he can't do that, because he knows this person is very strong when it comes to staying away from al-kufr. They've learned the chapter of al-ridda, for example, apostasy. They've learned about the different types of kufr. They've even learned about many examples of kufr under those different categories of apostasy. And so this person is aware of so much evil and how to protect himself from it. Then what is he going to do? He's going to come at you with trying to make you fall into a major sin. Again, if he finds that you have understood this matter very well, you've spent time protecting your heart and protecting your organs and your body parts from falling into the major sins, and so you've become someone who is strong against the major sins, then he'll come at you in a different way. But he's not going to leave you. He's not going to leave you. So if he sees people committing sins, he says, okay, my goal has been attained. And that's why the scholar said, 𝗙𝗁𝗵𝗲𝗁 لا يأتي 𝗙𝗲𝗿𝘁𝗵𝗲𝗁. That the devil is like the thief. He doesn't come to a demolished house. He doesn't seek out the demolished house. And subhanallah, at times, the Muslim would be ill. He would be or she would be sick. And they would attend a religious gathering for the sake of Allah. And by that, Allah the Exalted would cure them. And at times, a Muslim would feel a tightness in their chest. Subhanallah. And who amongst us does not experience this sometimes? Some sadness, some worry, some tightness in the chest, which at times you don't even know what brought it upon. You can't even find a reason for it. It just happens. Allah willed for it. A hardship that just descends upon you. A person would feel something like that, and they would attend an Islamic lesson, and Allah the Exalted would grant them relief. Relief of that worry, relief of that tightness in the chest, and the like. At times a person would be experiencing a hardship, and he attends a religious gathering or a religious lesson, and Allah the Exalted lifts that hardship from him. So the good deeds, they have secrets in them. If one attends a session of knowledge sincerely, they would be relieved from things, insha'Allah, even if it's something that you are not aware of. At times, a person would be protected from something by a good deed that they did, and they don't even know that they were protected from something. They would find that out on the Day of Judgment. Subhanallah, one of our sisters, she donated some money one time to our association, to the 𝗖𝗄𝗵. She donated some money for the sake of Allah to help the da'wah, to help the call of al-Islam, to aid the spread of truth. And what happened? She saw Shaykh Abdullah radiyallahu anhu in her dream. He told her, you had cancer in your body. She didn't know. He said, you had cancer in your body. And by that donation that you gave sincerely, Allah made the cancer go away from your body. Truly, you never know. At times, because we're so used to this fast-paced world, and you do something, you get the pleasure right away, right? We're so used to that, that might sometimes hinder a person in doing the good deeds. Because they do something and they don't see automatically an effect or a result. So a person might donate for the sake of Allah or do something else, lillahi ta'ala, help. For example, a wife might help her husband with something for the sake of Allah, and she goes against her nafs. And she prefers what he wants over what she wants, for example. Or the opposite way, the other way around. Or, for example, a person would, instead of doing something they wanted to do, they go and teach a religious lesson. or they go and help someone with their recitation of Al-Fatiha, for example, because they know that that's an obligation for the person to have a correct recitation of Al-Fatiha in the prayer. And so they strive to do that. Or something else. Think of other examples, there are many. Where a person prefers, for example, something that is better over something that their nafs wants, something that their desire is calling them to. And because of that, they would be protected from something which they didn't even know they had, or they would be protected from something which they didn't even know would happen to them. Like, for example, had they not donated the night before, for example, they would have gotten into a car accident at such and such location at this specific time. But because they did that, Allah eternally willed that they would be protected from that, because He eternally knew that they would donate at that moment. And that they would have that intention that they had in their heart. So the Muslim believes, even if we don't witness these outcomes and results right away, we believe. We didn't see Allah, but we believe in Allah. We know that Allah exists. And we know that Allah is not like anything else that exists. We didn't even see our own brains, but we know that we have a brain, right? We didn't see our soul, but we know that there is a soul inside of us. So the Muslim believes, and they continue like that, doing the good deeds, and insha'Allah ta'ala, the blessings and the secrets of those good deeds would come back to that person. Subhanallah. Allah is the one who creates the worry. Allah is the one who creates the distress. Allah is the one who creates the hardships. So ask Allah to help you. Whatever it is, brothers and sisters, that you are going through, whatever it is, ask Allah to help you. Even if it was something small that you see as insignificant, ask Allah. What did we mention in our last class? We mentioned the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, where he said that the slave should always ask Allah for all of their needs, even if it was something as small as their sandal strap when it breaks. So imagine you're walking somewhere and all of a sudden you look down and your sandal strap broke. Do you think people usually make dua in that situation? I think usually not. I think it's not the first thing they think about. They might say, Subhanallah, let me go and buy another one. But you making dua shows that you are in need of Allah. It's good for you. It's something that is good for you to make dua, because Allah rewards you and it's something that Allah accepts. So imagine with the big things, Subhanallah. And by the way, Subhanallah, usually people make dua when it comes to the big things, those big afflictions, those big hardships, a big matter, right? They don't usually make a lot of dua with the smaller things or things that they see as much less significant. But I want you to try it. I want you to try it, and I think that you would be surprised many times how fast you get what you want. Subhanallah. So resort to Allah and obey His rules and fulfill His orders, and refrain from what Allah made forbidden. So if the devil tries to trap us, and he tries to lead us to harm, and he tries to make us lazy, and he tries to weaken us when it comes to the obedience of Allah, And he might throw things at you, like we said, that he has seen in your past. Yani, he has seen from the experiences he's had watching you that those things tick you, or those things trigger you. So he'll come at you with one of those things. Like, oh, are you going to get up to pray right now? This person who you don't like to watch you pray is standing right there. They might come in. They might come in and look at you. At times, a person is constantly advising another to pray, for example. And so the person's nafs doesn't want to keep hearing that same advice from that same person. So when that person goes to pray, he might hide his prayer. For example, if you've ever encountered a situation like that, a person might want to hide his good deed, and the nafs doesn't want to feel that, oh, I'm doing it because that person keeps advising me. I'm just doing it for the sake of Allah. Which is good that they're doing it for the sake of Allah, but also this person should work harder to go against their nafs. Work harder to go against their nafs, and whether or not that person who keeps advising you sees you pray, you're doing it for the sake of Allah, and that should be enough. Even if they think, oh, they got up and prayed because I told them to. That's their issue. You know that you didn't get up and pray because they told you to. You got up and prayed because you know that you need to get up and pray. But if the shaitan sees that this is something that triggers you, for example, what is he going to do to try to make you fall into a sin? He'll come at you from that door. And like that, you can think about different situations where the shaitan would try to come at you because he's watched you so much. He's gathered info and intel about you. He knows the things that trigger you. He knows the things that he believes would likely make you fall into a sin. So he's gonna push those buttons. Subhanallah. The shaitan is so evil. He might go whisper to that person in this hypothetical situation that we just mentioned. He might go whisper to that person that's always advising you to go and pray, for example, and say, go advise so-and-so to pray, because he knows you're about to get up and pray. So he whispers to that one, then that one gets up, knocks on your door, or however it is, yani goes to you, and says, so-and-so, you need to pray. And then they see you about to pray, and then they think, oh, that you're listening to them, or you think that that's what they think, and then you stop praying. Subhanallah. And that would have been a trick of the devil. May Allah protect us. They go to lengths to make the Muslim fall into a sin. Then the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, وَأَحْسَنَ تَرْبِيَتِي فِي 𝗙ِّبَا, which means, and Allah granted me a good upbringing in my childhood. So the explanation means that Allah supported me in my young years by granting me the ability to grow upon obedience and upon righteousness, while doing the good deeds from a young age. So Al-Imam Ibnul-Jawziyy is mentioning here the favor of Allah upon him. Fadlullahi alayh. And this aligns with the saying of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam about the 7 people who were mentioned in one hadith, whom Allah the Exalted will shade under the shade of His Arsh on the Day of Judgment. One of them was, the Prophet said, وَشَابٌ نشأ في طاعة الله وشاب نشأ في طاعة الله. A youth who grew up upon the obedience of Allah. Yani who grew up in the worship of Allah. And the Arsh of Allah, or the throne of Allah, is the biggest creation of God. Out of everything Allah created, this is the biggest. It is bigger than paradise. And paradise is huge. On the Day of Judgment, the Arsh will be the only thing that is giving a shade to shield from the sun's extreme heat. So you know that on the Day of Judgment, the sun will come so close to the people's heads, and people will be drowning. Some people will be drowning in their own sweat. The only thing on that day, or let's say the only shade that exists on that day, is the shade of the Arsh. There will be no other shade except this shade which Allah creates. Al-Imam al-Muhaddith 𝗙𝗵𝗵𝗿𝘁 al-Baghdadi narrated in his book 𝗙𝗲𝗿𝘀𝗵𝗲𝗿𝘁 the saying of Al-Imam Ali, may Allah raise his rank, the companion of the Messenger of Allah and his cousin and the husband of his beloved daughter Fatima. What did this great Imam, Al-Imam Ali, say? He said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى خَلَقَ الْعَرْشَ إِظْهَارًا لِقُدْرَتِهِ وَلَمْ يَتَّخِذْهُ مَكَانًا لِذَاتِهِ. He said, indeed, Allah the Exalted created the Arsh, the throne, as a sign of His power, and not to take as a place for Himself. Meaning, Allah is not like the creation. He doesn't sit. He's not a body that has an upper part of the body and a lower part, and so He sits on something and the lower part of His body comes in contact with it. No, a'udhu billah. Allah the Exalted is not attributed with the attributes of the creation. And so this Arsh, this throne, is not something for Allah to sit on, because sitting is not amongst the attributes of God. It's amongst the attributes of the creation. Rather, Allah created this huge creation, Al-Arsh, the throne, as a sign of His power, as a manifestation of His power, to make it very apparent the great power of Allah. And had Allah willed for this creation to fall down, because it is above the seventh sky, it is the ceiling of paradise. If Allah willed for it to fall down, it would destroy everything that is under it, because it's huge, extremely heavy. Subhanallah. But Allah exists without a place, without a direction, without being in need of anything from the creation. So, as you know, Allah existed before the Arsh without needing it. So after creating it, He still does not need it. And Allah is as He always was, without a place, without a direction, without resembling the creation in any way. And only certain Muslims will be granted the shade of this huge creation, the Arsh. And amongst those Muslims is شاب نشأ في طاعة الله, a young female or male, a youth who was raised upon the obedience of Allah Ta'ala, and they grew up worshipping Allah the Exalted and doing the good deeds. They grew up upon obedience. So if one of us didn't have that, for example, if we were not granted this specific merit to grow up like that, then at least we can do that with our children. And you can do that with, for example, if someone missed doing that with their own children, then inshallah they are granted to do that with their grandchildren, for example. So Ibnul-Jawziyy, this highly righteous Muslim scholar who authored this booklet for his son, to advise his son, he was someone who grew up upon the obedience of Allah from childhood. And Shaykh Abdullah, our beloved Shaykh, may Allah raise his rank and benefit us all by him, he was also like that. Shaykh Abdullah grew up upon the obedience of Allah. And may Allah raise his rank, he memorized the Quran when he was only 7 years of age. When he was 11 years old, he had already memorized 2 large books in the Shafi'i fiqh, in the jurisprudence of Al-Imam Al-Shafi'i. Imagine that. They are not 2 booklets or 2 small books. No, they were 2 large books in the Shafi'i school. Subhanallah, he was 11 years old. And when Shaykh Abdullah, may Allah raise his rank, when he was 16 years old, the scholars would seek him out from other areas, and they would go to him in Harar, where he was, to acquire the religious knowledge from him. He was from Harar. That's why we say Al-Harari, Al-Shaykh Abdullah Al-Harari, meaning he's from Harar. And we say Al-Habashi, meaning he's from Al-Habasha, which is Abyssinia. So they would go to him in Harar. They would travel there to seek the knowledge, that is the Islamic knowledge, from Shaykh Abdullah when he was only 16 years old. And if the scholars, we're not talking about just anyone, they were actual scholars. If the scholars are seeking someone out like this, that means that that person is a scholar himself. Otherwise, why are they seeking him out when there are scholars in Al-Habasha? There were scholars there. They had many scholars. Even till now, there are scholars there. Extremely knowledgeable Muslims. Not like those people that show up on TikTok and YouTube most of the time. Most of those videos that you see that get millions of views and they claim to be like scholars, those people are not scholars. Those people are not scholars. Subhanallah, it's so sad because when you think about it, the actual scholars, they don't usually, there are very knowledgeable people on YouTube and TikTok, but I mean usually the scholars, you don't find them in these places. They are in the villages, they are in different areas around the world, and people seek them out. And they have gatherings. They'll have like a circle of knowledge, and they'll sit and they'll teach whatever science of Al-Islam they're teaching. It could be the creed, belief, it could be fiqh, for example, jurisprudence, or it could be Arabic grammar or something else. They will sit and teach it and people will gather all around them. So you won't usually find these people on TikTok or something like that on Facebook. Usually not. No, usually not. And most of those people, most of them, if not, I want to say almost all of those people, except whomever Allah has mercy upon, that have all of those views, that say things in a way to attract people, and they do certain things, and they hold certain events to try to attract the people. They're not scholars. Subhanallah, they're not even muftis. They didn't even reach the status of mufti. Yani, because we have knowledge, we can distinguish these matters. You can listen to something that they say, and subhanallah, usually right when they start talking, you'll notice that they didn't say the name of Allah correctly. They say Allah, for example, or Allah, without pronouncing the ha. Allah, Allah. This is how you say the name of God. Or they'll say Sallallahu Sallam, and you're like, what? What did he just say? And they're trying to say Sallallahu Alayhi Wasallam. They eat the whole statement up. They say Sallallahu Sallam. It's like, A'udhu Billah, that is something that is so ugly. They didn't even say anything correct in that statement. So, through knowledge, you know who the people of truth are and who the others are. Through knowledge. That's why Al-Imam Ali also said what? He said, know the truth and you will know the people of truth. The person needs to acquire the knowledge. Yes, you do need to acquire it from people who are credible. From people who are credible. But it's not the case that you pick someone out and you say, oh, he has 1 million followers, he must be upon the truth. And then you just stick to whatever he tells you. That's not the way that it is. You need to acquire the truth from the people of truth. And if you hear anything that you don't believe is correct, then you need to seek more knowledge and ask. Don't just take everything a person tells you like that. If something does not make sense to you, if someone tells one of us that Allah is in the sky, we will say, no, A'udhu Billah. Allah is not in the sky. The sky is created by God. How can God be in the sky? That makes no sense. Like our sound mind automatically would distinguish that. It would sift it out. Like, that's not true. God created the sky. He definitely existed before it, without it, and he's not in need of his creation. So for sure, God is not in the sky. You're not going to trick me by trying to tell me that God is in the sky. That's what the Christians believe. And that's what the Jews believe. They say our Father who's in the sky. The Christians say that. A'udhu Billah. We as Muslims do not believe that. We believe that God exists without a place, because he's not like the creation. Because Allah is not like the creation. So with the knowledge, we can sift out those people that are trying to put poison in our belief. So Shaykh Abdullah, going back to what we were saying, he was 16 years old, subhanallah. And the scholars would seek him out from other areas. And they would go to him in Harar to acquire the religious knowledge. If he was an ignorant person, people would not be seeking him out like that. People older than him and people who spent many years acquiring the knowledge, they would not seek him out. They would go to old scholars, for example, right? That have like so much knowledge that they have been acquiring for like 50, 60 years, let's say. Rather, why did they seek him out specifically? It's because they found highly praised traits in him at a very high level of those traits. They found a high level of understanding in his mind. They found strength in his knowledge, in his delivery. And they found brilliance in the knowledge that he was teaching. Yani he was brilliant. he mastered the knowledge that he was teaching. And that was in Tawheed, creed, belief, fiqh, jurisprudence, and hadith, and other than that. And so, Shaykh Abdullah is not someone that you see here and there. He's not. A person like him is extremely rare. We know that. We know that those types of scholars that spent their entire life since they were way before pubescence until they died, they spent their life upon obedience. It's very rare to find that type of person. Shaykh Abdullah never played with children in his life. You know how we probably played when we were younger? And we had, like what they say, you know how some people say, well, I had a childhood. Meaning like I went outside and played. Nowadays, everyone is like on their phone. Children are on their phone, on their tablet, on their looking at screens. And then you have some people that would say, well, I had a childhood. Yeah, I can relate to that. You can probably relate to that too, right? Like when we were younger, subhanAllah, people used to go out of the house, play in front of the house, kick a ball or something like that. Shaykh Abdullah, he wasn't like that. Can you imagine what that means, like for someone to never have played before? And it doesn't mean he was idle. It means instead of playing, other amazing things were taking place in his heart. Understanding and brilliance of religious knowledge, and strength, and purity, and detaching from the world. And subhanAllah, he became a very, very high-ranking scholar. That's why the highly righteous Muslims that met him, they praised him, and they said, he is a rare type of pious person. Yes, you can still find pious people nowadays, for sure. All they need to do is acquire the knowledge in the way that we explain. They acquire the knowledge in the proper way, fulfill all of the obligations, and refrain from all the sins. That person is pious. If they stay like that and add to it optional deeds, they will reach al-wilayah, meaning they will be highly righteous. And when you reach that state, you never leave it. And Shaykh Abdullah, may Allah have mercy upon him and raise his rank and benefit us all by him, he passed away and he was over 100 years old. He was over 100 years old when he passed away. He did so much for this ummah. And he put forth so much for his grave, mashallah. And so much for his hereafter. How happy will a person like that be in their grave? How happy would a person like that be on the Day of Judgment, when everything that was concealed is exposed? And he encouraged us to take this path, and he loved the good for us, so that we can benefit both in this world and after death in our graves and on the Day of Judgment in the hereafter. He wanted the best for us. I ask Allah to raise his rank, Shaykh Abdullah, and I humbly ask Allah Ta'ala to grant Shaykh Abdullah a similar reward of all of our good deeds that we've ever received. Allahumma ameen ya Rabb. Say ameen. Say ameen from your heart. Then the author, rahimahullah ta'ala, Ibnul-Jawziyy, said, وَحَفِظَنِي فِي الشَّبَابِ. He protected me in my youth, meaning that Allah the Exalted protected him from sins and from harm that would damage his belief. He was protected. Subhanallah, some people are protected from so much from a very, very young age. and some people it's different. Allah is the most wise, and He does whatever He wills with His creation. So, Allah is the protector. He is the one that preserves whomever He wills from evil, from affliction and destruction. Allah is the one who safeguards in times of hardship and distress. He is the one who guides us to the correct belief. Allah is the one who guided every one of us to the correct belief. And He is the one who protects us both outwardly and inwardly. Who protects us outwardly? Allah. And who protects our heart? Allah. So Ibnul-Jawziyy is thanking Allah for protecting him from the sins when he was young, and for facilitating the good for him. And Allah protected him from what would harm him. For Allah is Al-Hafiz, the one who protects whomever He wills with whatever He wills. Allah is the one who protects your tongue from falling into what is wrong, what is invalid, and what is prohibited. And He is the one who protects us from the false belief. He is the one by whom we have been granted the correct belief, by whom we have been granted teachers that are upright and trustworthy and are upon the methodology of the Messenger of Allah and the highly righteous Muslims. They are upon their methodology, meaning they are upon the Prophet's aqidah, his belief, and his teachings, at a time when most of the people commit wrong acts. And you can see that with your own eyes. Look at how things are right now in the world, and look at how they were, for example, when you were young and still a child. I'm sure you see a big difference. Look at the sins that people are committing left and right. Even when you look at that, subhanallah, like, if any of you work in the public school system, or you know someone who does, I think this is one of the most evident ways that you can tell. Like, look at children nowadays, and if anyone here is a teacher, or you know someone who is in the public school system, then you know. There's a huge difference in a first grader nowadays, or a person even in kindergarten nowadays, than there was like 20 years ago. Ask any teacher that you know that works in the public school system, and they'll tell you the things that children do, the statements that they say, the way that they act. Allahu Akbar. It's like they've grown so fast by the things that they are exposed to. And subhanallah, brothers and sisters, this same thing that we're talking about here, it teaches us something else. Yani, we already know this, but it also shows it to you. It clarifies it even more, which is that if you teach these children the good from a young age, you would be surprised how much good they soak up. They soak up whatever it is you give them. They are filled up by whatever it is that you pour into them. So if you pour good, you will see the good fruits of that. You will see the good outcome. And if a person pours evil into them, they will definitely see that, and they will soak it up so quickly. So it's scary. It's really scary, but it can be amazing if it's done in the right way, and a person has children that they raise upon obedience from their youth. From, honestly, as soon as they are being breastfed. And even some people say start when the woman is pregnant. You might think, how? Well, it's not really what our class is about, but the pious woman has an effect on the children that she bears, that she gives birth to. The things that she is involved in, the things that she does in her day-to-day life, they have an effect in some way. So, by the blessing of your deeds, the father and the mother, insha'Allah ta'ala, the child would come out with something special. And that's why when it comes to having children, a person needs to really think about this. It was said, مَا مِنْ عَبْدٍ حَفِظَ جَوَارِحَهُ إِلَّا حَفِظَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ قَلْبَهُ وَمَا مِنْ عَبْدٍ حَفِظَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ قَلْبَهُ إِلَّا جَعَلَهُ حُجَّةً عَلَى عِبَادِهِ. It means no slave guards his limbs, his body, and his body parts, from haram, from sin, except that Allah preserves his heart. And no slave has his heart preserved by Allah except that He makes him a guiding proof for His slaves. This means that you protect these limbs and these body parts from sins during youth, and insha'Allah, when you're older, Allah will not make you in need of the people. Insha'Allah ta'ala, you will not be in need of the people. Allah would preserve your limbs for you, and you will be able to do what most, or almost all, at that age cannot do except with the help of someone else. And you would know this if you ever saw an older person needing help, right? You know how that is. The one who protects their eyes from looking at the haram and protects their ears from listening to the haram, and they protect their hands and likewise the rest of the body parts from falling into the sins out of fear of Allah. They protect them out of fear of God in obedience to Allah and His orders. Then this person, when they get older, insha'Allah, those body parts that they protected from sin, Allah will protect them for them. And so you will still be able to see, while others might go blind or half blind and things like that. You will still be able to walk on your own 2 feet. Insha'Allah, your strength and your body parts will be preserved for you, because that's one of the blessings and secrets of preserving these endowments when the person is young. And Abu Shuja', he was 160 years old. Abu Shuja' was 160. He was 160 years old. 160. And he would jump up energetically. And he would walk energetically. So they asked him, "How do you walk the walk of young people? And you jump up like that while you reach the age that you're in?" Like they're telling him, "You're 160 years old. How is it that you jump like that?" And he used to jump. Subhanallah. He said to them, حَفِظْنَاهَا عَنْ مَعْصِيَّتِهِ فِي الصِّغَرِ فَحَفِظَهَا اللَّهُ لَنَا فِي الْكِبَرِ. He said, we protected our limbs and body from disobedience in young age, so Allah the Exalted protected it for us in old age. Yani he's telling them, by the favor of Allah upon me and His protection, I was guided to protect the endowments of Allah, meaning my body parts, from committing sins when I was young. Allah protected me from that, from falling into the sins. And because of that, Allah has protected me when I got older. And so He could still hear, He could still see, He could still walk and even jump, and He was 160 years old. And it was narrated from Mujahid that he said, I set out for battle, and Abdullah ibn Umar accompanied us to bid us farewell. When he was about to leave, he said, إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ مَعِي مَا أُعْطِيكُمَاهُ ولكني سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إن الله إذا استودع شيئا حفظه وأنا أستودع الله دينكما وأماناتكما وخواتيم أعمالكما. He said to them, and he would do this when he would bid people farewell. Abdullah ibn Umar, he is Abdullah, the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab. He was a pious man. The Prophet said about him, he's a pious man. What did he say? He would say to the people when he's bidding them farewell, I have nothing material to give you, but I indeed heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam saying, indeed, when something is entrusted to Allah, He preserves it. Therefore, I entrust your religion, your trusts, and the final outcomes of your deeds to Allah. He used to tell them this, so that Allah the Exalted would protect their religion for them and would protect their deeds and the final outcomes of their deeds. Yani, the final deeds that they have, they would be protected and they would be upon what Allah accepts. He would make dua for them by this. And Allah the Exalted knows best. We'll stop here, insha'Allah ta'ala. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك